What do you think about me calling the documentary The Sparks Brothers?
In lieu of anything better.
Yeah.
Was there a working relationship between Edgar Wright and Sparks before this started, beyond a mutual respect?
I had been a fan for a long time, but before making the documentary, like a lot of people in the say in the documentary, like Sparks are so sort of enigmatic that I wasn't really sure where they lived or whether they were on planet Earth. But then one day, I think it was in 2015, I was actually in Los Angeles writing Baby Driver in an office on the lot in West Hollywood. And my friend Michael Bacall was in the office for the day with me. And we were talking about Sparks. And I'd become, by this point, as a lot of Sparks fans are, like a full-on evangelist. Like, you know, if you're talking about music at some point, I would turn the conversation around to Sparks. And he knew one Sparks song. All I ever think about is sex. So I said, oh, wow, listen to this. So we ended up listening to a ton of albums. And then I sort of thought, oh, I wonder if Sparks are on Twitter. And so I found Sparks' account, and then I saw Sparks follows you. And I was like, oh my God. So I followed them back. Well, I wasn't already following them, so clearly not that big a Sparks fan. But I messaged them and said, hey, I'm like a really big fan. I saw you're following me. And I said, is this really the band? And then Russell replied and said, yeah, this is Russell. I said, oh, you know, usually like bands like sort of have a PR person who runs their account. I said, not us. So then within 24, and also then the funny thing is, after having known and loved this band for like decades, like just the funny thing that I'm talking to them, and also they're only like 20 minutes drive away from me. But then within 24 hours, I was having breakfast at Russell's house with Ron and Russell. And that's when we met for the first time. I saw them live a couple of times, and I sort of got it into my head that the thing that was stopping Sparks from being as big as they should be was like an overview. And it started to kind of annoy me as I watched kind of like documentaries about, sometimes I felt like lesser bands. I felt like, why isn't there a documentary about Sparks? So I think I'd said this enough times to enough people that it kind of came to a head at a Sparks gig in 2017, where I was standing in the VIP balcony. Me and Phil Lord had gone to see Sparks together. And I said the same thing to Phil. I said, you know what, like Sparks, they really need like a documentary about them. I think that would really like push it over the edge, that you could tell the context of them and explain to people how they were like the sort of the originators of most of these genres. And Phil said, you should make the movie. And I was like, oh, okay, I will. So, and then I mentioned it to Ron and Russell after the gig. And as soon as I'd said it out loud, I want to do a documentary about you guys. It's not something that a promise like that, you cannot take back. So here we are in 2021 with the finished film.
And we were, you know, before meeting Edgar, we were huge fans of his film. So it isn't like we had to Google Edgar Wright to find out who this guy was that was coming to breakfast the next morning. So it just was such an easy relationship to kind of further, and it worked out so well.
To embark on a documentary, I mean, you really have to have a dedication and a focus, and then just stamina to do a project like this. Because I think in a certain way, it's a little different even than a feature film, where there's no kind of parameters. You know, the story can continue, you know, for forever, sort of. And where do you stop? Where do you start? You know, it's kind of this nebulous amount of material, like a vast amount of material, and there's no real ground rules. So to be able to kind of hone in all of those things, and to say that, you know, it's an album with a a band with a 25 album history and then entertained doing something that's as vast of a subject matter as that. And it's it takes a real focus and just stamina to want to do that. And so we really were ecstatic when Edgar, was not only our friend, but then it became to doing this film, which we thought could be something amazing. And it is, we're really just ecstatic with the results.
Ron and Russ, you also mentioned kind of in the film that you were maybe a little trepidatious at first, letting people know a lot of this information. As the process went along, though, was it easier to just kind of like let out all these stories? Like, I'm still blown away to find out that you were sports stars in high school. Like, was this the kind of thing that you expected to be sharing?
We discussed with Edgar that part of the appeal, we think, for people that are really aware of the band is that there isn't that much personal information, or that everything that they know about the band is via our music and via the image they have of the band, via the album covers and seeing it on TV. So to kind of unveil too much of that information that is kind of the more personal stuff, the question was, does that lessen would it lessen the aura that people might think of the band having? And so it was discussed, what would be a good kind of division, how much you should share with the public and how much can still be held back from that, from revealing. And so we think there was a really good, there was a really good separation, and a amount of what was said and what was not said about the band. So things like being a quarterback on the high school football team, that was okay.
I think all of those things just add to the legend, because it's like, I feel that it's if anything, but especially because of the music is so kind of like sort of just imaginative and kind of like sort of far reaching, seeing the kind of like the sort of more normal things about you, I as a fan, I find it even more impressive. It doesn't go the other way where it's like, oh, they're boring. It's like, oh my God, this is like sort of like all of this came from these guys. I find that mind blowing.
It's not all that damaging to our image to be seen in football uniforms, so it just kind of adds to the incongruity of the whole situation.
The more I thought about the idea of Edgar Wright making a Sparks documentary, it just made me think kind of deeper about things that maybe even weren't spoke about in the film. Because Edgar, you've said a lot of times how your films are Trojan horses. You bring people in thinking it's going to be one thing, and then it turns out to be something else. And Ron, I know, and Russ, I know you're going to be writing songs that you want to write, but in a way, it almost feels like you're tricking people in. It's like it's got this beat that you can dance to, you can listen to, but then you listen to the lyrics, and all of a sudden, it's this whole other level of like, what am I hearing right now? We
were really happy that the lyrics were given a big importance within the film, that it's not only discussing the music or the image of the band, but that we don't know too many documentaries where they actually speak specifically about lyrics within songs, and having someone like Neil Gaiman talking about the lyrics of Sparks, or even Flea, waxing so eloquently about Sparks lyrics was really important for us that side was treated so well within the film. So I think that makes it so much richer than just it being just discussing the music, because we don't know how many documentaries really have delved that deeply into the lyrical side of bands.
I really liked, for example, the Bee Gees documentary. However, I was kind of a bit bummed when they didn't cover the Sgt. Pepper movie at all. I was like, I want to hear that story. And in a way with Sparks, it was something where the misses are as interesting as the hits, and the reasons things that don't connect, that's an important part of the story. And like, you can't have the ups without the downs. Like most music documentaries, it's like, hey, we're the Beatles and we're flying high and then we split up. Or like the Rolling Stones documentary goes up to the start of the 70s and then just stops. But with Sparks, it's like you have to draw the whole graph. And the down, like the misses are as important as the hits, and also some of the best stories. So once we had started doing it, it was like, it was a case where it's like, I can't like just skip over something. I have to tell the whole story. And when you get the opportunities to do it as a fan, it's like, I can't not tell the whole story. And I'd be kicking myself if there was something that was missed out and people said, oh, I wanted to hear about, you know, introducing Sparks, but we cover it, you know.
I hate putting genre labels on stuff. I hate boxing things in. But if anybody talks about Sparks music, it's always going to be pop. It's always going to be synth pop. But I find it interesting because I find there's some kind of like progressive feelings in there that people never talk about. Do you feel that your music kind of gets mislabeled here and there?
Well, whenever it is labeled, I think it's mislabeled in a certain sense, because, you know, one thing that we're really happy about with the documentary, I mean, it's an obvious thing, is that it covers all those periods. So we aren't that glam rock band Sparks. It's much more than that. And you know, we through all those periods, we've never labeled ourselves any of those things. It's always been, you know, other people, I mean, no offense to journalists, but you know, journalists are have to kind of find a slot for you. And we always felt that we were in a certain way operating outside of all of those things. And, you know, it just seems to minimize the music when you put those kind of labels on anything. And we thought that, you know, whether it's self-serving or whatever it is, just that we felt our music was kind of more important and timeless in a certain sense than that.
Well, yes, just so you were talking about, there are misses here and there. It seems that you guys had the availability to do what you wanted to do pretty much your whole career. Nobody ever said you can't do that.
No. I mean, that's the one thing, you know, that we're still proud of. And, you know, we're not masochists, and we obviously enjoy having commercial success when it comes around, but when it does come around, it's not been us doing something different than we've always done. It's just been the circumstances surrounding it that have made certain albums or songs become more visible. And so that's one thing we're proud of, is that the vision that was there from day one, and when Todd Rundgren first took a stab at Sparks, and the only person that took a chance on Sparks, the beginning, you know, the sensibility that we had then is the same sensibility that we have now, and we would never want to water down that sensibility in search of something you know, more widespread commercially, you know, because it would probably fail anyway if we even had the ability to figure out what that is that's commercial, you know. And especially nowadays when everything is so fractured in the whole music area, no one knows, there's not, you know, there's no you know, surefire thing that, oh, you do that kind of music and you're going to have you're going to be huge on TikTok, guys, you know, and that sort of thing. And so we're, you know, we're just proud that we've stuck to our vision, and people have congregated towards it at various times in bigger ways than other. But now in the end, we're just happy that what we're doing now is, we feel, is as vital as it was from you know, day one.
You know, Edgar, you also mentioned, you know, since you are such a fan before even, you know, this process started, as such a big music fan as well, and you know how music plays in your films, we haven't seen any Sparks music in your films yet. Is Last Night in Soho going to feature some Sparks songs?
No. No, Last Night in
We have
Soho
to go now.
very specific sort of genre. I will say this, and I like, there was one time I tried to use a Sparks song in one of my films. I tried to use This Town Ain't Big Enough for the Both of Us in Hot Fuzz. But here's the thing, and this is a credit to Ron and Russell. Ron and Russell's music is not easy to use as like wallpaper audio, because I think because it's so vivid, not just in terms of the songs, but the lyrics are so evocative. You can't just have Sparks in the background, not easily. So I tried it and it didn't quite work. It would have been better if, like in a Baby Driver style, I had designed the scene to go with the song. but I was like trying it after the fact, and there were like bits that were great, but there was a point where maybe it's the Spark song. I remember like putting it on the scene. It was actually in the scene where Simon Pegg is fighting Timothy Dalton in the model village. This town ain't big enough for the both of us. However, there was a point where I, as a fan, I'd be watching the scene, but I'd start listening to the song. And I was thinking, no, maybe that doesn't work because I'm distracted by the song in a good way. So I think that's the thing is I haven't used one yet, but I would say that's because Sparks can't just be on in the background.
Also, I think it's one reason why there aren't a lot of cover songs of Sparks, because other musicians hear them and they think that version is kind of so stylistically entwined with the song itself, just the way that it actually is done, that there is no way for them to do an alternate interpretation of it.
You've done some of the best Sparks covers, like some of the songs on Plagiarism. Yeah. There's a couple of them that are better than maybe Pulling Rabbits Out of a Hat and Change for two are like, I think, superior to the original versions.
No.
Yeah. No, we like both of those. Yeah. Yeah.
You had the issue with not being able to get that other film back in the 80s with Tim Burton off the ground. But now that Annette's coming up, are you kind of actually happier now that it happened, where social media can help bring a bigger, or the stars can bring a bigger notice to it?
We're happy that in the end, it's going to be happening, the release of Annette and having two films this year, having a documentary by Edgar Wright is, that would have been enough. But having the other film that we've worked on for 8 years finally see the light of day, and to be really such, potentially, be of interest to a lot of people. That Adam Driver's in it, Marion Cotillard, and directed by Leos Carax. So having those elements in it, it kind of got, it took on another level from when we first had written it and first had envisioned it 8 years ago, when it was potentially going to be just the next Sparks album, actually. And then it took on a whole new life as a movie, and then it escalated once Adam, got involved. So in a way, I mean, you just having it happen now, it's just, maybe it's part of the whole saga of Sparks that it never rains, but it pours, and so that's going to be the situation for 2021. Now we have two films. So who would have thought?
It's not too late for Tim Burton to go into production on My the Psychic Girl in 2021 as well.
That's right.
And then you get the hat trick.
Gentlemen, thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day, and thank you for talking with me.